Hi guys, this is our first demo and the camera is not working. So some of our demos that I filmed previously, the camera will work better. But today, this is where we're at. So I'm going to show you how to make a pumpkin roll. We're starting semi-easy for baking 2. You've already done your practice lab where you went through the ingredients and their functions. And now we are going to do a cake roll. We're gonna do pumpkin, but you could do all sorts of different flavors. I like them. We've done lemon, we've done chocolate, we've done birthday cake, red velvet. This is mostly just the technique, and then you could find any other recipe that has lots of different flavors. So to get started, I will preheat my oven to 375, and then I'm gonna use jelly roll pans. So here are my pans. They are half sheets, and they need to have sides because I am going to use the sides. So just like when you make cakes in baking 1, we are going to do a similar, make sure it doesn't stick, okay? So I've got spray, and then I've taken my parchment and I've cut it, and I didn't just cut it in half. Instead, I used a full sheet that I cut, and you want it to be the width of your pan, so the width, but then you want it to be too long. This too long part is gonna be our handle. So I'm gonna fold it in right here, and then I'm gonna fold it at the top right here, just so that it doesn't flop around entirely. So then you can kind of see there how it is folded, and it's not gonna just flop around, especially in our convection ovens that are pretty powerful. Pretty sure I just sprayed my computer screen with cooking spray. So I did more cooking spray, and then we are gonna use a little bit of flour. So we're gonna do spray, paper, spray, flour. And we're really gonna make sure that these things don't stick, right? So I'm gonna sprinkle. Of course, I've already washed my hands. I'm not wearing a mask so that you can see me and hear me, and I am the only one in this room right now. So I'm gonna sprinkle. I'm just gonna make sure that that flour gets on the edges. There we go. Some people use just a regular pan, and then they use like flour sack towels, and that works too. So I'm gonna set this off to the side. My recipe is for a double. So mine here is gonna show you a double, okay? So I will do one more pan. You guys are each going to take home a whole cake that's been rolled up, but they have to cool before you can fill them. And you'll take home a tub of frosting. So if you have a tub that you can bring, that would be awesome, just like a Tupperware with a lid. Maybe bring like a 2-cup Tupperware so that you can take home your frosting with you. And then your remote work will be unrolling it, filling it, rolling it back up, okay? So my recipe is kind of a basic cake recipe. So first I have eggs. My double pumpkin roll calls for 6 eggs. And then I have sugar, and it calls for 2 cups. And you almost always beat the sugar, right? So that's what I'm gonna do. Beat eggs and granulated sugar until they are thick. So they're light in color. I think it'd be really dumb if I tipped this over, but they are really light in color. I don't even know if you can really see that, but that is what I want, and they are thickened. You can see when I like pull this off my spoon, it is, see how the thick part, okay? So I've got that, and then this is a pumpkin roll, so of course I'm gonna use pumpkin, and I'm gonna use just straight up pumpkin puree. Don't use pumpkin pie filling because we're gonna add our own spices to it. So this is 1 1/3 cups of pumpkin puree. I don't know if you've ever tried doing a pie pumpkin on your own, but my friend tried it I mean, I've tried it before, but I haven't done a side by side, and they actually liked the canned pumpkin better. I think it's one of those things that's kind of like, some people like Kraft mac and cheese more than they like homemade just because we're used to it. So this obviously has just the perfect flavor for pumpkin puree. So I'm going to beat that in next. Okay, I'm going to scrape down the sides too. You guys know that. This is just a basic pour batter cake, pour batter or high ratio cake. It just means that it is pourable. I bet you guys could guess that. So now I'm just going to slowly stir in flour. My mixture here is 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of ground cloves, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So I'm going to pour about half of that in there, stir it. Remember, this is when we start developing gluten. Okay, guys. This whole thing just turned off. This is when we start developing gluten, when we combine flour with the liquid. Isn't this lovely? You know what? Great news is I've already done all the beating, so I'm just going to stir in my hand. Okay, so flour has glutenin and gliadin. When you mix flour with a liquid and you knead it or stir it, then you are forming gluten. And what we don't want to do is overform the gluten. It's going to be like tough and almost like a rubber bouncy ball when you press on it. You want it to spring back, but you don't want it to be like over-mixed muffins, almost can bounce like a bouncy ball, and they're gonna have points on the top. You just ruin your texture when you do that. Okay, and then there's the other half, and it is going to get stirred in. And I'm just kind of lightly stirring so that I don't overstir. These are all things that you guys probably know and remember from baking 1, so it's just a review for you. I don't want any lumps of flour in there, so I'm going to get rid of those. Sometimes on a brownie mix it will say like stir 50 times, and that seems really silly, but what they've done is tried it, you know, hundreds of times and figured out the average time that we need to stir it all together is about 50, and that is going to give you the best texture on those. So there's a reason that maybe a mix would say that. Sometimes there's even a few lumps in them, and it will say specifically on a package sometimes that lumps are okay. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is weigh it out. If I want to make sure that it's accurate, which you do, then you want to weigh it out. So you're going to put this on a scale, and then you're going to zero it, and then you're going to pour 1 pound 6 ounces of batter onto each pan. So you'll be splitting with a partner, right? So each pan will have 1 pound 6 ounces of batter. I prepared my other pan while my cake was mixing earlier. And then we will get these in the oven just like a regular cake. What we do when they come out is not like a regular cake though. If you have made these before, then you know what I'm talking about. We're gonna be rolling these. So they're almost like a giant, what are they, Swiss cake rolls that have the layers with the rolls. They're almost like that, okay? So this is going to get spread in my pan, and you can see that it's gonna be really thin in my pan. Oh, I had a little flour lump there. That's okay, I stirred it in. And the reason that it's okay that it's so thin is that I'm gonna be rolling it up, right? So kind of like cinnamon roll dough, I'm gonna be rolling this up anyway, so that's totally fine. I wanna make sure it's all the way to the edges, so please make sure to get it all the way to the sides. And then you want it to be like fairly even. So I'm going to even it out as much as I can. And then the fun part, this is the way I can tell if you watch the demo too, right? Besides your demo notes part. The fun part, except for those of you who don't like a lot of noise, the fun part is this. Sorry, I should have warned you. Just to kind of tap out any air bubbles. We usually do these for Thanksgiving, and we'll make like 100 of them to sell to the public. That couldn't happen this year for some reasons. and you should hear that day. It's a really fun, like just running. I know a couple of you said you like kind of organized chaos, which I love organized chaos when it's wild, but everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. It's definitely organized chaos on those days. Okay, so that is just about even. Okay, these are gonna go into my oven, and I'm gonna put them in right away. They're gonna go into my oven for about 13 to 15 minutes. I can check with a toothpick to make sure they're done, or basically I can tell it's not gonna be liquidy in the middle, and then if I stick my finger on it, it's gonna bounce back. If it leaves an impression, that means it's not quite done in the middle. Okay, so we'll check back here in a minute. While your cakes are baking, you are going to make your frosting. So remember, you're gonna bring home a tub of frosting. So I've got 16 ounces of cream cheese, because remember this is a double. I have 12 tablespoons of butter, and both of those need to be softened at room temperature. I will leave them out, but if you're making at home, you wanna leave them out because cream cheese does not combine well unless it's softened. So I've got that in here, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on. So mine has just been sitting out and it's soft, is nice and creamy. If I'm gonna make this in the morning, so like for you guys who are making this in the morning, I will leave out cream cheese and butter overnight. It definitely, you know, a food inspector will tell you not to. It's one of those practice, you know, kind of like techniques versus what they say you're supposed to do. So there's most of the things, it's like follow the rules. But on this one, it's okay to leave it out for a few hours. And I'm just gonna leave it out overnight so I don't get up in the middle of the night to do it if I were gonna make a cheesecake in the morning, which is what you guys are basically doing with cream cheese, okay? So that is really nice and mixed together. And I am going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So if you just saw what I did, most of baking, it really is a science, right? I can't just like toss in some baking powder and cross my fingers. I don't want to just toss in flour, fat, things like that. Vanilla is pretty much the only, you know, besides chocolate chips or something, bake shop ingredient that you can just kind of toss in what you want. I know I spent a whole week studying desserts and pastries at Cordon Bleu one summer, and our pastry instructor there said the same. He said, use as much vanilla as you like and as you want. So if you have a little bit more than 2 teaspoons, you know, it's really no big deal. So this is nice and creamy. There's no chunks in there, which is what I'm going for. Chunks happen when one of your 2 ingredients is cold. So even if just your butter is cold and you're trying to combine it with warm cream cheese, those 2 temperatures together of the fats, you're gonna have chunks, and you don't really want chunks. Okay, then I have 2 cups of powdered sugar, and I'm gonna put some in, and the reason I'm not putting it all in at once is just so it doesn't fly everywhere. So I'm gonna slowly mix that in. The cake smells so good right now. You guys can't smell it too bad? I'll let you taste it then. Or maybe at this point you've already tasted. I don't know, I forget in hybrid. Okay. And then I'm gonna let that mix together. And then sometimes I add just like a dash of salt to it. I like it. Salt brings out the flavor of other ingredients, but it also balances all the sweetness. So like this is the same frosting that I make for cinnamon rolls, and I always add just a dash of salt. So a dash of salt is optional. It's up to you. It is not going to change like the chemistry of this because we're not baking it or anything. So it's not going to toughen anything. So it is okay. It is just for flavor in this. That would be just like putting salt on your pasta or something. Okay, so I'm just gonna stir this up, and then for class, you'll divide this into 2. You'll each put some in your tub to bring home to roll up. It is springing back in the center, and it's not like running or anything in the middle. So now I'm gonna use my handle, and first I'm gonna run a knife around the outside of my pan, and you could use just like a butter knife or, you know, whatever. And I'm gonna just run this knife around the outside of my pan so that it is loosened from the edges, just to make sure if anything tried to stick. And I can kind of see it like lifting up, and that's a good thing. Okay, and then I am going to pull this out of the pan. You gotta kind of work fast. It'll set like this. So I'm just gonna take this and I'm pulling it out of my pan like that. And then I'm actually gonna turn it around. If I were working on two sides of the table, I could do that. And then I'm just gonna roll it like a cinnamon roll, and I'm gonna roll it really tight, and I'm gonna do it from the end without the flap. This is where some people use like a flour sack towel. I tried the towels a whole bunch of times and I just didn't love, they were always just little, and these are gonna go on here, and then they'll have time to cool while you finish cleaning your station. And then each person is gonna go home with one of these rolls and a tub of frosting. And then on your remote work day, you will find out how to fill them. So